Imagine for a second that you are building your absolute dream house. I mean, you've got the perfect blueprints, a brilliant architect, and like the ideal piece of land in a really great growing neighborhood.
So it's a pretty good setup.
Right. Everything is completely set to go. But week after week, the contractors just keep abandoning the site.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The foundation sits there, half poured. The framing gets delayed for months. And the craziest part about all of this, they aren't walking away because the blueprints are flawed. They aren't leaving because the ground is unstable or, the permits got denied.
So why are they leaving?
They are walking away because they suddenly realized they can't secretly buy up the empty lots next door to profit off your rising property value.
Oh, I see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they cannot make a side hustle out of your dream. They stop building your house altogether.
I mean, that is a profoundly frustrating scenario to even think about. But, when we zoom out from a single residential house to the scale of a massive multi-billion-dollar metropolitan city, that exact dynamic can bring an entire economy and literally millions of lives to a grinding halt.
Yeah, it's wild.
The mechanisms of self-interest, they just scale up with the size of the project.
Which brings us to today. Today, we are looking at a truly fascinating analytical essay regarding the highly contested development of Amaravati. And for context, for those who might not know, Amaravati is the proposed capital city of the Indian state of Andhra Pradesh.
Right.
And the source we're diving into today, it looks right past the usual political headlines. It argues that the real culprit behind the city's stalled progress isn't geography, it isn't a lack of funding, and it isn't even the surface-level regional rivalries we usually hear about.
Yeah, the author presents a really compelling argument here. They're saying the engine driving, or, in this case, completely derailing this massive infrastructure project is the hidden economy of political stakes. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's an exploration of what happens when a public good basically collides with the need for private political profit.
So our mission today is to uncover how these invisible financial incentives actually dictate the physical world around us. But before we really get into the weeds here, I do need to make something very clear to you, the listener.
Yeah, this is important.
Definitely. The source material we're discussing deals with real, highly charged political figures, active political parties, and ongoing events in India. We are absolutely not taking any political sides today.
No, not at all.
We aren't endorsing the specific viewpoints of the author, nor are we condemning them. Our mission is strictly to unpack the fascinating arguments and ideas presented in this text so you can understand the core dynamics and, the theories at play.
That context is just so vital. I mean, we're just here to analyze the mechanics of the author's argument, right?
Yeah.
Just diving into the how and the why of this really specific perspective on urban development and political economy.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the fundamental flaw of Amaravati. Well, at least according to how the political class allegedly saw it.
Right.
From the outside looking in, building a brand new world-class capital city seems like an absolute slam dunk for any government. I mean, it's a legacy project. It goes in the history books.
You would think so.
Yeah, but the source argues it was doomed from the start because of the specific dirt it sits on.
Yeah, the geographical location really is the linchpin of the author's entire argument here. Amaravati is located in the Krishna-Guntur-Godavari Delta regions.
Okay.
And the key characteristic of this specific agricultural area, both historically and administratively, is that the land records have been meticulously maintained and just crystal clear for decades.
Meaning there's absolutely no ambiguity about who owns what plot of land, where the property lines are, or, who the deed actually belongs to.
None. Zero. The generational transfer of property there is heavily documented. And that transparency completely short-circuits the traditional political real estate economy. Well, typically, the playbook for a massive infrastructure project like a new capital is pretty straightforward. Politicians and insiders use their advanced knowledge to quietly hoard land in the target area.
Oh, right.
They buy it up for pennies, the government officially announces the new capital, administrative offices move in, industries follow, and boom, the value of that hoarded land skyrockets overnight.
So it's like a politician trying to buy cheap stock before a massive unannounced IPO. But in this specific region, the company's books are entirely public, and the local shareholders are watching their every move like hawks.
That is exactly it. The source really emphasizes that the farmers in this Delta region are highly politically aware. They are an active, questioning society.
They aren't just going to look the other way.
Exactly. They demand to see records and understand the fine print. So when the government initiated what is called the land pooling phase, where they basically ask farmers to voluntarily surrender their acreage in exchange for developed, highly valuable commercial and residential plots in the future city. It was mechanically impossible for politicians to secretly step in and hoard thousands of acres.
Because everyone was watching.
Right. The locals were too vigilant, the process was way too public, and the records were just too tight.
So if the politicians couldn't secure the land beforehand, who actually stood to benefit from building the city?
Well, if Amaravati were built exactly as planned, the primary beneficiaries would be the local farmers who contributed their land, the local business ecosystem, and, future generations of citizens who would live and work there.
The people, basically.
Exactly. The political leadership's direct personal stakes in the project would be virtually zero.
Yeah.
They could not arbitrarily pool land and artificially inflate its value to pad their own portfolios. What's fascinating here is how the source fundamentally redefines the concept of success for a political infrastructure project.
In what way?
Well, in a purely civic textbook, a project is successful if it serves the public good. But the author is arguing that in the modern political real estate economy, if the leadership cannot secure a personal financial stake, the political will to execute the project simply vanishes.
It just disappears.
Yeah, the lack of an avenue for personal profit became Amaravati's fatal structural flaw.
So if the builders cannot wet their beaks, the city does not get built.
Pretty much.
That is a cynical, yet mathematically ruthless way to view city planning. And logically, if the politicians couldn't secure personal stakes in Amaravati, they were mathematically forced to find a new geography where they could.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the shift in leadership. A new government under Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy comes into power, and suddenly the Amaravati master plan is just put on ice.
Right. The author theorizes that upon taking power, the new administration essentially audited Amaravati and ran the numbers. Finishing this massive world-class capital meant taking on enormous state debt and utilizing massive public funds.
Which is a huge commitment.
It is.
Yeah.
But completing it offered their specific political faction almost no direct financial or political reward, simply because, like we said, they hadn't been able to establish those vital stakes in the highly transparent Delta region.
Right, because you aren't going to take out a massive mortgage to build a house on land you don't even own.
Exactly.
They needed a new location, a place where the land records aren't crystal clear, where they could actually run the playbook. And according to the source, they look up the coast to Visakhapatnam, commonly known as Vizag.
Yeah, and Vizag presents a completely different real estate landscape compared to the Amaravati region. The author notes that Vizag has a long, tangled history of disputed lands, complex trust lands, and, ambiguous ownership issues.
The opposite of the Delta region.
Exactly. For a political entity looking to aggressively build a massive land bank, this kind of administrative ambiguity is highly desirable.
Because ambiguity means opportunity. If ownership is disputed or managed by a vulnerable trust, you can use government leverage to consolidate control over it.
Precisely.
And the source gets incredibly specific about this strategy, pointing to the immediate focus on Vizag right after the government change. It mentions the appointment of key figures like Vijaya Sai ready to oversee the region.
Yeah, the text specifically highlights the aggressive, systemic moves made regarding established land trusts in Vizag. And to understand this, a trust in this context often involves massive tracts of historically wealthy, aristocratic land managed by a board.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the author points to the Mansa's trust, noting the highly controversial government move to replace its head, Ashok Gajapati Raju, with Somchat Gajapati Raju. The text also mentions the targeting of prime legacy properties like the Waltair Club.
I mean, it reads almost like a hostile corporate takeover, but executed by a government against its own prime real estate. You just swap out the board members of these massive land trusts to people friendly to your faction, and suddenly you have backdoor control over thousands of acres of incredibly valuable coastal property.
That's the argument. The author views all of these developments, the aggressive focus on trusts, the administrative disputes over prime club lands, not as isolated routine government changes, but as a highly coordinated political economic strategy.
With one big goal.
Right. The core objective, according to the text, is to secure and consolidate influence over a massive land bank in Vizag.
Okay, but playing devil's advocate here, maybe just asking what a normal, well-meaning citizen would think.
Sure.
If I hear the government announce a new 3 capitals plan, where they want to move the executive branch to Vizag, keep the legislature in Amaravati, and put the judiciary somewhere else, I might look at that and think, hey, this is just good decentralized governance.
Right. That sounds reasonable on paper.
Isn't spreading the wealth and development across the state better than putting all our eggs in the Amaravati basket? Why is the author so convinced this was a hostile takeover rather than just progressive urban planning?
Well, that is the exact justification the government used publicly, framing it as equitable decentralized development. However, the source argues that the three capitals concept was essentially a strategic smokescreen.
A smokescreen?
Yeah. The government knew that explicitly and entirely abandoning Amaravati, a project that had already seen significant public, financial, and emotional investment, would cause an immediate catastrophic political uproar.
Oh, totally. So they soften the blow. They say, we aren't abandoning your dream city. We are just sharing the responsibilities with other cities.
Exactly. But the real mechanism is that by making Vizag the executive capital, they bring in the government headquarters, the bureaucrats, and the surrounding economy.
Which instantly inflates the value of that massive land bank they just consolidated through the trusts.
You got it. That is the financial mechanism at play, according to the source. It was a buffer designed to make the pivot to Vizag more palatable while shifting the economic gravity to lands they controlled.
Sneaky.
But the text points out that even with this sophisticated smokescreen, the government miscalculated one crucial element: the fierce resistance of the Amaravati farmers.
Right, the people who had already voluntarily surrendered their generational farmland under the legally binding promise of a world-class city. You can't just expect them to be okay with that.
Exactly. The source highlights that these farmers launched a relentless, unyielding movement. They did not accept the decentralized governance narrative at all.
Good for them.
And the author argues that this specific, localized uprising is what ultimately stalled the entire three capitals master plan. The farmers' resistance basically became an immovable roadblock the political strategists simply did not anticipate.
Here's where it gets really interesting, I think, because the source shifts gears from real estate economics to deep-seated sociology. If these farmers fought back so fiercely, and the logic of Amaravati being a people's capital was objectively so strong, why didn't the rest of the state back them up?
It's a great question.
Yeah, why hasn't the entire public united to demand the city be finished?
That discrepancy brings us to what the author considers the most tragic and paralyzing element of this entire conflict: the fatal vulnerability of caste politics.
Okay.
The power to demand justice, to force the completion of Amaravati, rests entirely with the voting public.
Yeah.
But the author argues the populace is politically paralyzed because they are deeply entangled in caste-based loyalties.
It is like a magician's sleight of hand. I mean,
Yeah.
the politician is the magician, and caste identity is the distraction.
That's a perfect way to put it.
While the audience is furiously arguing with each other over the color of the magician's jacket, the magician is quietly emptying all of their wallets. The source points out that instead of asking the objective question like, is our region getting justice? Are we getting the infrastructure we paid for? The public has been conditioned to ask an entirely subjective question.
Which is the leader of our caste currently in power?
Exactly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this dynamic reveals how easily public focus can be manipulated away from objective progress. The source argues that fracturing a populace along caste lines is the absolute greatest weapon politicians possess.
Because it keeps them divided.
Right. If the people of a region unite based on shared objective developmental goals, they are practically unstoppable. They can demand accountability and transparency.
But if you split them into warring factions based on identity, they basically do the politicians' jobs for them.
They will spend all their civic energy blindly defending their respective political leaders and fighting each other. The politicians remain completely secure in their support bases, insulated from the consequences of their administrative failures, while the region as a whole just stagnates.
It's so frustrating.
It is. The author is actually pleading with the public in the text, begging citizens to hold every single government, regardless of which caste is in power, to the exact same developmental standard.
And for anyone listening, think about how often you see local zoning or infrastructure debates in your own town turn into partisan mudslinging.
Oh, all the time.
The author's point is universal. If one government actively hurts a capital project and the next government is suspiciously slow to fix it, you have to be equally angry at both. You cannot change your principles or lower your standards just because the political colors change.
It is a profound call for objective accountability over subjective loyalty. And, that principle leads us right into the present-day situation because the political colors in Andhra Pradesh have changed again.
Right. We are in a brand new chapter now. The government has flipped back. Construction in Amaravati has officially restarted. The cranes are moving, concrete is being poured, buildings are going up.
Sounds like a win.
Yeah, on paper, if you just read the headlines, it looks like a total victory for the original master plan. But the source throws a massive bucket of cold water on this apparent success.
Yeah, they do. The author asks a very glaring, uncomfortable question about the current state of affairs. If Amaravati is truly back on track, where are all the big companies?
Yeah, they point out that handing out government construction contracts is happening rapidly, but where is the aggressive international push for the knowledge economy?
Right.
Where are the efforts to bring in Infosys, TCS, massive IT hubs, and advanced manufacturing centers?
The source makes a vital distinction here between two very different types of development, construction versus commerce.
Okay, break that down.
Construction involves building physical structures, laying roads, and erecting administrative blocks. Commerce, on the other hand, involves the much harder work of attracting global corporations, fostering innovation, and creating a self-sustaining, multi-generational economy.
Right.
The author observes that while construction has certainly resumed, the aggressive momentum needed to actually attract world-class investment is distinctly lacking.
And if we look at the mechanisms we've discussed today, the source traces this lack of commerce right back to that original root cause, political stakes.
Exactly.
Think about the mechanics of a construction contract. The government allocates funds, hires a contractor, pours concrete, and there are immediate short-term political and financial benefits. There is local employment, patronage, and often political kickbacks baked right into the contracting process.
Yes. While attracting an Infosys or a TCS to open a massive campus is objectively incredible for the local youth. I mean, creating thousands of high-paying jobs and boosting local small businesses, it takes years of complex negotiation.
It's not a quick fix.
Right. And more importantly to the author's thesis, bringing in an IT hub does not artificially inflate political land values overnight, nor does it offer the rapid, concentrated political rewards of a massive infrastructure contract.
The author even notes a subtle but really important shift in the leadership style. They mention that between 2014 and 2019, under Chandrababu Naidu, the approach to Amaravati was highly independent, focused, and fair.
Yeah.
But looking at the current situation, the author feels that the control isn't entirely in his hands anymore.
The source suggests that a new leadership dynamic is pulling the strings behind the scenes. And this new dynamic allegedly prioritizes politically useful development, the short-term construction contracts, over the balanced, fair commercial growth that was originally promised.
That's a huge shift.
It is. The author strongly implies that the current power structures, despite being a completely different party, are operating with a similar mindset to the previous ones, prioritizing projects that offer immediate political leverage and stakes over long-term civic prosperity.
So, what does this all mean? We have a city that was entirely stalled by one government because there was no personal real estate profit to be made in the Delta region.
Right.
And now it is being slow-walked by the current government, which is focusing on short-term construction contracts rather than building a long-term economic engine.
It means that Amaravati's real problem was never about whether the Delta soil was stable enough to build on, or whether it was geographically central, or even about caste rivalries at its absolute core.
Then what was it?
The tragedy of Amaravati, at least according to the mechanics laid out in this source, is simply that it was designed to be a capital for the people, not a vehicle for the personal gain of politicians. In our current political ecosystem, a massive project lacking those personal political stakes is incredibly vulnerable to sabotage or just neglect.
Which brings us right back to you listening to this deep dive right now. Why should you care about the bureaucratic struggles of a capital city being built thousands of miles away in Andhra Pradesh?
It's a fair question.
Because this story is an absolute masterclass in how invisible incentives shape the physical world you walk through every single day.
Totally.
Whether it is a new subway line in your city that keeps getting delayed for mysterious reasons, a sudden controversial change in zoning laws in your neighborhood, or a massive public works project that just seems to make no logical sense to the taxpayers, you have to look past the political rhetoric.
You really do.
You have to stop asking what are they building and start asking who owns the land underneath it.
The author actually makes sure to clarify their ultimate stance at the very end of the essay, and it serves as a really important summary of their philosophy. They emphasize that Vizag absolutely deserves massive development and investment.
Right.
The region of Rayalaseema deserves development.
Udarandra deserves development.
It is not a zero-sum game. You don't have to punish one region to reward another.
Exactly. Building up one geography should never require deliberately tearing down or stalling the progress of another. The author's final thesis is that the story of Amaravati isn't really a story about a specific city at all.
No.
It's a cautionary tale about the clash between the personal financial stakes of modern politicians and the future prosperity of a society's next generation.
That is heavy.
This raises an important question, actually. If an objectively well-planned, transparent, citizen-first infrastructure project is fundamentally incompatible with the financial incentives of modern political leaders, does that mean, true, utopian urban planning is actually impossible in a modern democracy?
Wow.
Can a city ever be built just for the people? Or is political profit a mandatory building material before the first shovel even hits the dirt?
That is an incredibly heavy thought to leave on. If the contractors cannot skim a little off the top, does the dream house ever actually get built?
It makes you wonder.
It really does. Something to think about the next time you see a coming soon sign on an empty lot in your town.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden machinery of city building. Keep questioning the blueprints, keep looking closely at the foundations, and we will see you next time.